I am so excited about this episode of Lex Hive Podcast. I am joined by a good friend of mine who I've known for years now, Kelsey Stokes. Kelsey Stokes, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Michael. I'm so happy we finally got a chance to do this.
Yeah, it's so exciting. And I know you have a really busy schedule with trials and different things. So it's awesome that you're able to make some time and jump on here.
I will do
Um,
anything to make time for you.
I appreciate that. I appreciate that. We have a lot of laughs off camera, so this is gonna be a lot of fun. So I'm looking forward to this. This is something I've actually never asked you before, and it's been bothering me, and I've kind of held off on this before we actually got on the podcast. So before we get into all the big cases and the courtrooms and what you're doing, I wanted to kind of look back at your time at UT Austin, Houston Law, and understand a little bit more about what got you into law in the first place.
So you're throwing me a curveball. The first question. Okay. I will tell you this. It was not a straight line. I went to the greatest university in the country, University of Texas, of course, and I got 2 degrees. I got one in actuarial mathematics and another one in economics, a BS and a BA. And I thought that I wanted to do the whole actuarial thing initially, but working for insurance companies and making insurance companies a lot of money didn't sit right with me. I also knew that I always wanted to teach. And I think that's kind of the overarching theme in my life, is that I have always enjoyed teaching. Even when I was at the University of Texas, I tutored. I worked for several. Head Start was one of the programs that I worked for. Girl Start was one of the programs I worked for. Both excellent programs, and the You Teach program also excellent. And I knew that I wanted to eventually end up to a place where I was teaching, and that is actually my goal in life, is that I will retire and be able to teach for free, the kids that are disadvantaged, and teach them that learning a whole broad subject and why math in particular is so important, and why thinking analytically is so important. So you're wondering, how did I end up in the law? Well, when you are a lawyer, it turns out you actually teach a lot. So not only as a trial attorney do I teach juries, complex matters, science, medicine, etc. Also, when you're talking to a judge who is very busy, is not familiar with the case, you're teaching them the case. And then when you're prepping a witness, you are teaching them, okay, here's what, I'm learning and I'm also teaching. So, for example, when I prep a surgeon, obviously a surgeon knows more about surgery than I do, but how does what they know about surgery fit into the legal aspect of the case, and what we have to prove to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, what we have to do to pass Daubert. And so that's kind of, long way of saying I've always wanted to teach, and ultimately being a lawyer has provided that avenue for me. Just a side note on, I just talked about prepping experts, and one of the things, it's so funny because it reminds me of whenever I prep an expert, it reminds me of when I tutored kids in math. And they would get so mad at me because they would say, why do I have to show from this step to that step? This is so, Miss Stokes, this makes me so mad, because I already know that when you take X and you add it to X, that equals 2X. So why can't I just get to 2X? And I say, because you have to show your work. You have to show the professor, the teacher, that you know how to get from A to Z. So a surgeon who, if anybody has ever met a surgeon, you know that they know everything. A surgeon will say, well, I don't understand, Kelsey, when I have ruled out something in my head, why do I have to say this? Why do I have to say how I ruled out, in my differential diagnosis? Because every day I do this when I see a patient. Every day I see a patient, and I am able to tell immediately, well, you don't have diabetes. You are not a smoker. So therefore I can rule those out. Why do I have to write it down? And I say, because just like in math class, surgeon, you have to show your work. And so anyway, long way of saying that I find myself, when I was a tutor in college, doing almost the same thing, having almost the same conversation as I do now when I'm talking to highly decorated surgeons in the field.
That's so cool. That's one of the things I love about you is you're just an amazing storyteller as well. So I guess it's part of the teaching, right? So you make it relatable, you tell the story, and you're kind of showing the roadmap of everything that's behind it.
Well, it's all connected. It's all connected.
Yeah.
Because the other thing is kids will say, I don't understand. I'm never going to use math ever. Or I'm never going to use economics, or I'm never going to use this, that, or that. And it's like, well, you actually are. You're going to use this analysis. And even if, this analytical thinking process, even if you don't ultimately you don't work at NASA, even if you just go to college, you're going to need the foundation, the building blocks. And so, yeah, there is a lot of trying to make it relatable and trying to tell people, no matter where you are in life, whether or not you're teaching high school, a jury, a judge, or an expert, that, hey, you got to make it relatable.
As a girl dad, I know my daughters are both kind of big fans of just women who are powerful and who can kind of command some sort of presence. And so I can see my younger daughter relating to you she's a STEM nerd. She loves science and math and everything. So she's like, this is going to be my girl.
Oh yeah, no, and I tell you, it's the girls. I'm so happy that I feel like as a society, we're moving more towards accepting that girls are actually really good at analytics, analyzing things, technology, math, all of that. And also we have emotional intelligence too. So, I'm just saying we have a pretty good leg up on things.
It's kind of the full package, right? And then I think that's really why you had this so far. And you're young still. Like, you have a remarkable career.
Thank you for that.
A lot. Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not even trying to placate it. You literally are. Like, you are very well decorated, very, very well respected, not just at Mass Torts Made Perfect and other areas. Like, literally everyone that I talk to, when I say, hey, Kelsey now joined this elite team at Lanier, they said it's about time, right? I mean, Lanier, just for anybody who doesn't know, if you haven't been in the mass tort world, this is like joining the all-star team
90s.
Globally. Yeah.
Yeah,
the 90s
we're
Bulls.
Talking about the original, the 90s Bulls, the first dream team. You're absolutely right. The first one with Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, all of them. Yeah.
That's right. It's one of the most decorated firms in the world. And Kelsey is now on that team. You deserve to be there. You are incredible. Walk me through that first day. You step in, you're at Lanier. What's it like? What's it like being on that elite team? Like, what's it like?
So first of all, the first thing to note, there's two overarching things that I note, and I'm not sure. I think there's one that's more important, but the two things that stand out immediately is the professionalism, just absolutely above. I think above any firm, any corporation I've ever seen. The level of professionalism just it exceeds anything I've ever seen. And then just absolute like human decency, just kindness. And I frankly think that's probably the most important thing, is just the kindness. From the moment you walk in the door, Shelley, who's our receptionist, who has been there for decades, she is the nicest person in the world, and you walk in the door and you immediately feel welcome, and she remembers your name. I remember seeing her. I think it was she had met me for like 2 seconds, And then the next time I see her, she's, hey, Kelsey, blah, 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 blah. And I thought, my God, how do you know? It's amazing. And it just only gets, as you walk in, you're just, the office services group, phenomenal. We had a big meeting for, right when I first joined, for the barred hernia mesh settlement. I'm administering counsel for that deal, and we had the special masters there administering counsel, and we were there to present how the settlement was going to work to hundreds of lawyers. Number one, the firm has the space for that. There's this gigantic conference room, which was one of the first things I saw. Is I said, oh my goodness, we can have big meetings here. Where there's 3 conference rooms, and it's like a hotel, and you can break it down, and it holds over 100 people. And so I said, I want to schedule a meeting, and all I had to do was tell Angie, the office manager, and then boom, she put it into piece. It was just like this well-oiled machine. And from the IT department to the office services, they did sound checks the day before. The special masters walk in and they're just like, this is amazing. And so it's just such a professional and such a well-oiled machine. I mean, it truly is, the dream team of firms, period. Plaintiffs or defendants. It's just phenomenal.
Yeah. And it feels good to be part of the good guys. I mean, there's good people on both sides, but
Yes.
I mean, you're advocating for people. You're making sure that you're holding companies accountable when they choose profits over people, or they ignore a couple facts because they're like, hey, look, this is just a small subset. And
on that point, going to my origin story, since you insisted
Yeah.
on starting there, I had the opportunity to work I was a summer clerk for a defense firm. And as the stars aligned, whatever you want to say, fate would have it that at this defense firm, I actually had the opportunity to work on a plaintiff's case. It was a commercial case. And the other work that I did was the defense work. But it was a litigation department. And so, number one, I realized, okay, I love litigation. And the reason I love litigation is because you learn about different things. Whatever the case is about, you know everything about it. If the case, for example, is about a plot of land, that has to do with an oil contract, you learn everything about oil contracts, etc. If the case is about surgical mesh, you learned everything about that. And what I realized is, while I enjoyed the concept of litigation, generally speaking, that I felt like being on the side of the plaintiffs and being on the side where there was a wrong done to them, that was much more satisfying, much more fulfilling. I went to another firm I basically worked all the way through law school. So my 2L year, I started at a plaintiff's firm, a litigation firm that specialized in mass torts, medical devices. And when I started to see what the documents I was privy to, I can't talk about it,
Sure.
other than just what I saw, the internal documents, the internal communications, the lack of testing, the lack of any sort of concern, it seemed, about patient safety. I thought, oh, I could never work on the other side. I have to help people who they go in and they trust that a product is going to be tested, that it's going to have gone through the clinical studies, that you would just assume, right, that these devices are going to be tested on human beings. Turns out, no, they're not. They're not. And so, people will just accept the recommendation to have something implanted, and they have no idea that these devices are not tested. And so all of that is kind of what led me to realize, okay, I need to help people who are otherwise just unknowingly trusting the system. I have had numerous conversations on the road with people who, after they have struck up a conversation with me, so what is it that you do for a living?
Yeah.
Well, I represent plaintiffs who are injured by medical device manufacturers. And they're like, well, isn't that approved by the FDA? And I say, well, no. So 9 times out of 10, a device is not, quote, approved, it's cleared. And that just means that it's substantially similar to a device that was on the market before 1976 when the MDA, the Medical Device Amendment, came through.
Is this the 510K process you're talking about?
Yes, this is the 510K process. And so they say, wait a second, whoa, you're telling me that there's not an approval? You're telling me that these things they're not tested in humans? I'm like, correct. And they say, well, I have a knee. I have this artificial knee in me. Are you saying that wasn't? I'm like, more than likely it wasn't. And then, of course, they're forever disturbed. But it's that type of conversation where I realize that there's so many people out there that get these devices and have no idea. They just have no idea.
Yeah, and it's raising awareness, and you get to teach, right? You get to teach me.
Right.
I remember that's the first time I met you, by the way. You were teaching me about hernia mesh. It might have even been transvaginal at one point, but hernia mesh definitely was a huge piece, and you were teaching and giving continuing learning education to other fellow lawyers. And then we all had to go out there and educate on your behalf the plaintiffs, right? The people who were hurt. Right. And I'm not sure if it's true in devices as it is in drugs or so, but there's a stat of only around 8% of people actually wind up coming forward because they don't know. They don't know they have a lawsuit. They don't know that their pain or their injury or whatever might have happened could have been because of the product. And yes. So, it's all of our jobs collectively to raise that awareness and try and find the people who are out there who need your help.
Right. And, you brought up a good point as far as people don't know. They get these devices or they take these drugs and they don't know that there's a whole group of people that are experiencing the same side effects and having the same bad outcome. And if it were not for the plaintiff's bar that gets the word out in whatever way possible, whether it's through a podcast like what we're doing now, whether it's through advertising that, hey, this is a problem, this has been recalled, this device has been shown to do this, this device or this drug has been shown to cause these injuries. If it weren't for ads like that, then people would just think this was a them problem, right? Yeah. That this was just a bad result that happened in them, not that the manufacturer actually did not test. They were negligent. They failed to do what a reasonable company should do in manufacturing a device that's meant to be implanted, or a drug that's meant to be taken by human beings.
Yeah, I mean, and that's why we trust people like you, right? I mean, so you have been, correct me if I'm wrong on some of these stats, but you have been co-lead on one of the largest MDLs, multi-district litigations in the entire country. So you had the barred hernia mesh litigation, I think around 23,000 cases or so in there. And then
some, yes.
Yeah, and then you were negotiating a resolution for, on behalf of the plaintiff bar for almost 30,000 cases, I believe.
Yep.
And walk me through what it's like with that kind of responsibility, and if you even have a fun war story or two about what it's like to go against C.R. Bard and Johnson & Johnson and the hernia mesh world.
Well, number one, the lawyers that we go against are the best in the business. Yeah. I mean, they are, hands down. And I can tell you that they are actually decent people too. Okay, I have some war stories where there have been some advocacy but ultimately what they're doing is representing their client, and they do it very, very well. And so number one, you have to be ready. You have to be ready, and they also have clients that don't quite understand what is wrong with the device. They frankly don't understand that that the products that, especially from the in-house counsel perspective, okay, that these products are not a result of testing, clinical testing, etc., and they are true believers. And so you are going against these massive, giant corporations with very good lawyers who firmly, wholeheartedly believe that they are putting safe products out on the market. And some of them are more accepting of when they see kind of the story that's laid out. They're more accepting of that than others. Some of them want to continue to try cases, and they continue to try until they finally just realize that they're ready to resolve the cases. So it is certainly not for the faint of heart to go against these companies. And war stories. One of my favorite war stories, and I love this man, and I won't say his name. He's on the other side. He's one of the best lawyers in the business. And I had an expert on. I was 7 months pregnant in the second bellwether trial. You may have heard kids in the background. I hope not. I tried to use this noise canceling thing, but you may have heard toddlers. So I was 7 months pregnant, going on 8, and I have this expert on the stand for the whole day. And I get a note from the deputy clerk that says the judge wants you to know you can sit down if you want to. And I said, no, I can't. I can't look weak in front of the jury. I just can't do it. And so I'm standing there, and I'm in these heels, and I'm just witnessing my feet, just like swell to the size of a basketball. Okay, and I think that he may have meant well. He, to this day, when I give him a hard time, he says he meant well. But he comes up to me, opposing counsel, while we're on a break. I'm in the middle of examining my witness, on a break. And he says, your feet look like basketballs, Kelsey. You might need to go to the emergency room tonight because it looks like you have preeclampsia. And I thought, why would you say that to me, in the middle of this examination? And to this day, he credits himself for bringing to my attention that I needed to watch my blood pressure while I was pregnant. But in the end, it was just advocacy, right? And but it's funny, and to this day, I still enjoy. I still have fun conversations where we will talk about the antics used at trial, and it's fine. But the bottom line is that ultimately we both have clients that we need to be advocates for, and I think that we both do that very well. And in the end, when a resolution happens, it's hopefully everybody sees that it's for the good of the patients out there.
100%. So when you tell me that story, I can't help but ask this question. And it's coming from a guy, so I know it can come from a guy, but what's it like being a woman in this kind of leadership, right? You're in a pretty predominantly male field with the trial lawyers. It's starting to shift. You have a lot of really powerful, amazing women coming in. But, when you're doing these trials, there's a whole lot of guys there, right? Mm-hmm. And you're on this leadership position. What's it like? Is there pressure? Is there a different kind of atmosphere?
I actually have never really... I have never seen... I don't allow myself... Let me put it this way. I don't allow myself to notice that. And I think because of that, I have never felt like anybody has treated me any sort of way, because I'm a woman. I just, here's what we have to do, guys. And I'll even say, all right, boys, let's go. This is, let's get it together. And I have never felt like that was any sort of, there was a difference in the way that I was treated. I will say this, that being, I've had 2 children during the course of the bar litigation. I was pregnant, in the second bellwether, I was 7 months pregnant and into my 8th month. And the third bellwether, I was in my first trimester. So I didn't tell anybody except for a few, very close people, very close friends. And I was vomiting every morning, right? And and I would have to say, "Oh yeah, I'm just." They're like, "Are you okay?" "Yeah, no, just little nervous about today." And a couple of astute men picked it up, but there are certainly things that I think that women, because no matter what, and I hope I don't make dads mad out there, but no matter what, my kids, when they get hurt, when something happens, when they just want to feel comforted, they want mom. And it doesn't matter if I'm working on a brief that's due in 45 minutes and I'm finalizing it and I have to get it done. When my daughter runs in and says, "Mommy, mommy, mommy," and is upset, I have to stop, and I have to comfort her. And I don't know, men probably go through that. I suspect that it's probably, the burden is a little bit more on women. And the thing is that women, we will never ever want to give that up. And I will never ever give that position up. My position as a mother is the most important thing to me. And I never thought, before I had kids, I didn't think I would ever, be there, but I am. The moment you have a child, you melt, and everything changes. And so, to circle back to your original question, are there things that are different? I think that the position of being a mom it's very challenging to juggle when you have the position of being, co-lead counsel, and it's doable, but you do have the mom guilt a lot. I've had moms that are in the industry that we call each other and just say, "Hey, has this happened to you?" And I had kids late. I'm not going to say my age, but I definitely had kids later. Almost like as late as you can have them. And so I do have a lot of women who have gone through that, and I can call and say, "Is it normal for me to feel guilty right now? Is it normal?" And I'm usually assured that it is normal, and that don't worry, you're doing a good job. But you just can't help but feel that way. And I know dads have some semblance of that, but I just feel like for moms it's a little bit more profound.
I would agree. I think that it's very interesting because you are this ferocious competitive fighter, and I can just see you going full mama bear if your daughter's ever, or your kids are ever in trouble or anything like that. And
Yeah.
I would not want to be on the other end of that, just in case, because if anyone who's able to stand in front of a courtroom 7 months pregnant and be like, "I'm not going to sit because I don't want to show weakness," you are a modern day gladiator from Texas. So I'm good. We're good. We're good.
Well, thank you.
I do want to ask you about a recent project that you're working on right now, because I was grossed out by it, and I'm also very interested in it. I have a lot of people who possibly will see this podcast either in clips or they'll tune in, Mass Tort Michael or something, and they're going to ask about the Olympus scope litigation. And I wanted to know if you could kind of walk us through. It doesn't have to be a whole, theory and all of that, but just what can you condense down that makes it easy for even people who are not in law to understand, like, what is the Olympus scope? Why is it on your radar, and how do people get help?
Okay, so it is disgusting. It's disturbing to know that the scopes that are used in the majority of routine preventative or diagnostic procedures like colonoscopies, that they're reusable. In other words, they have been used in one, maybe a dozen, maybe more patients before they have been used in you. And so you're thinking to yourself, well, surely these things have been sterilized.
Because it's oral and anal, right? Is that
This is, yes, every
okay?
way that so that you can be scoped. Yes. So this is the colonoscopes used in a colonoscopy. This is the gastroscopes used in the upper endoscopies. This is the duodenoscopes used in ERCPs, and even the bronchoscopes, which are used to look at the lungs. So yes, you would think that, especially, we don't know why a patient previously was being scoped. You know, was it diagnostic? Was it in somebody who had problems? You know, maybe potentially tuberculosis, maybe potentially a patient who is immunocompromised and has in their system what's known as an MDRO, or a multi-drug resistant organism, commonly known as a superbug. That you're thinking to yourself that if it's used in a patient like that, surely it's either discarded or it's cleaned. But the truth is what we were discovering, what we have discovered, the way that it was brought to me and the team of lawyers that is looking at this, is an expert who we have used to look at medical device reports, adverse events, said, you have to look at this. There are a number of complaints in the MAUDE database, MAUDE, that the FDA, that's the way that the FDA keeps track, to the extent that anybody does report of adverse events for medical devices. And the expert said there is a pattern here. And so we looked at it, and we looked at the history of these devices, and Olympus Scopes, who is a significant part of the market share, over 70% easily, potentially 85%, is putting out products that are, you cannot clean them, even following their instructions for use. Every step of the way, if you follow their instructions for use, it is not actually being adequately cleaned. And there is no warning, our contention is, there is no warning that adequately tells providers how to clean these, because even if you follow it to the T, it doesn't clean it. There's also no warning that says, if you use this in a patient who had a multi-drug resistant organism, tuberculosis, HIV, if you use it in one of those patients, these need to be thrown away. There is no warning that says that. And so what happens is, even following the instructions for use, these providers will clean them after using them in a patient who has an infection with, has been infected with one of these organisms. Think that they've cleaned them because they've followed all of the instructions provided by the manufacturer. They then use them in a otherwise healthy patient, and that otherwise healthy patient, within sometimes hours, days, weeks, even up to 30 days. Literature says it could be more, but we're looking at in that 30-day time range. They get hospitalized and they get cultured, and it turns out they have a multi-drug resistant organism. An otherwise healthy person does not have that. You do not come in off the street with a superbug inside of you. So if the only thing that has happened from, when you were walking around healthy, everything's A-okay, and then you're in the hospital with potentially, sepsis, organ failure, and God forbid death, is that you had one of these scope procedures, it's a problem. And there have been outbreaks. There's been FDA action because the company does not report to the FDA any sort of adverse events properly. There's been criminal prosecution against this company for how they report to FDA the adverse events. And so it is not like a provider can actually go and look in, whether it's in the literature or whether it's in the FDA's database, and say, hey, this is a problem. This is a red flag. Let me tell my hospital. Let me tell my surgical center. We should not be using these. Because the MDRs, medical device reports, adverse events, are actually not being done in the way that they should. So the problem is much larger than what even the MDRs appear to show, and even the MDRs show a major pattern.
So this goes beyond the standard, oh, you might get an infection risk of any sort of, routine procedure like this. This is not having informed information that actually helps.
Absolutely.
Make an informed decision. Yeah.
This goes way beyond an infection that might result just from being in the hospital, okay, or from having a procedure done. Again, these are otherwise healthy patients. These are people who are going in. It's that time of the in their life. They're 40, 45, 50. You should not just agree to these procedures lightly because the scopes that are being used are not clean. And so it can happen in, like I said, otherwise healthy people. And the infection that you get is not just an infection, a run-of-the-mill infection. This is an infection that is passed from one patient who has this significant organism, this superbug, and then it gets passed into an otherwise healthy patient. So that is not adequately warned about.
Yeah, and it could be multiple patients too. I mean, this is a situation that we have to, as marketers, right, for case acquisition, we have to educate the public on, like, hey, fighting for your life after a routine procedure 2 days later sometimes, like all of a sudden sepsis, serious condition, comes up, and we have to be able to have those conversations and find these people. And a lot of times we need help, so we'll tag team with a Smart Reviews or a Perio. Like, these are nurses that can actually look at everything and say, yes, this is the right product ID, this is an Olympus scope, so that this way before they actually get to you at Lanier, who this isn't an MDL formed yet, but I would vote for Kelsey to be on leadership for this one, because you want someone like Kelsey in your corner for these kind of litigations. Before they go to you, want to make sure that they actually had the Olympus scope. It's 70 to potentially 80+% of the time. You're right, but it's always good to have that validation. So I love doing that.
You have to have a company like yours. A company that is going to first of all identify the medical records that are needed, so that you can prove up the product identification to know, okay, this is what one of the Olympus scopes that's reusable. This is one of the ones we're looking at, and then also to be able to identify the records that you need to not only just show the product identification, but also the injuries, the dates of service, and to narrow that down, to work with the providers and get those, and so that firms can do an adequate case evaluation, because that's very critical. If you are lazy or careless on the front end of a case investigation, if you're not utilizing companies like yours, if you're not utilizing the proper software, the proper nurses, those type of entities, then you're going to potentially file cases that should not have been filed. And we, of course, in the plaintiff's bar maintain that the cases that we file have passed our investigation, have passed that that initial look. This looks like a product that was made by the defendant, and it was injured as a result of a defect in that product. But but too often than not, the the plaintiffs. I don't know if you hear my dog in the background. He's apparently having a nightmare. But too often than not,
It's about bad filings.
I know it's funny because he's like don't stop filing bad cases. Don't file
That's right.
bad cases. You have to get a company that actually evaluates cases, please. No, but in all seriousness, you can go so far astray. Nobody, and this is what drives me nuts about the defense bar who tries to paint plaintiffs' lawyers as filing, terrible cases. Oh, it's all just frivolous lawsuits. Believe me, the plaintiffs' firms are not going to be paying the filing fee, paying for the medical records, doing the discovery, doing all of the work that is needed once you file a case, if they thought that case was frivolous to begin with. And I think that's the biggest misconception, generally speaking, not just in the mass torts, bar, but just against plaintiffs' lawyers that I feel compelled to stand up for them on, is we do not file stuff that we don't believe in, because if we did, we would be incurring costs, spending money on cases that would ultimately not pay. So
yeah, and it's really just making sure you give a best shot for the entire community of individuals you're trying to help, right? And so if someone has a question about these things, I don't want to speak on your behalf, so let me know if this is something you can offer, but if they're on the fence, can they come to you and just be like, Kelsey, here's what I have, here's the kind of case. I don't know if I want to co-counsel with you yet. I don't know if I want to, do this, but should I file this, or can you give them some guidance? Are they free to come to you with that kind of question?
not only are they free to come to me, but I am asking them to come to me. I am begging them to come to me, because what we want to do is make sure that everybody understands the science. Me, along with my team, have retained experts and are making sure that we are getting it right. That we are getting it right before filing, because it is so important that plaintiffs' counsel out there understands the science before they go and start acquiring tons of cases, because they don't know what they're looking for. They don't know what they're investigating. They don't know, what are certain patient populations, for example, that you don't want to, you want to just, they might actually have a superbug, for example. And so please come and talk to me, and let's talk about the case that you think is a case that is worthy of filing, and let's work on it together.
I love that. I love that about you. You're so open, and it really does help everybody. So when you're not fighting these wars against multi-billion-dollar institutions and managing 23,000 potential claimants all knocking on your door being like, is it settled yet? Have I settled yet? What do you do to unwind? Like, for people who are super stressed, who might be watching this, like, do you have anything you do that just kind of disconnects even for a few ephemeral moments?
So if anybody has the answer to that question, then I also invite them and am begging them to come and talk to me. No, I try to, there's not much time. But when I do have it, I try to unplug, I try to put the phone down, and I try to spend time with my babies. That's as simple as that, because like I said,
disconnect.
Just disconnect and be present with the babies, because that's what makes me, that's the most important job I have. And it's important to me that I show them that even though the job is important to me, and representing clients, representing injured people, against these companies that are careless in the way they test products, that the most important thing to me is that my kids feel like their mom loves them.
Oh, my heart melts for that. I have two more questions, if you can indulge me.
Bring it on.
And then you could talk for as long as you want. I only have two more that I just wanted to ask you about this. So you've
Okay.
spoken nationally. You've guided other attorneys across the country through some of the most, I've watched you do this, complex litigation. If there's one piece of advice you'd give another attorney who wants to build to the kind of practice or the kind of reputation that you've built, they want to be another Kelsey, right? Or they want to be the next them type of deal. What kind of advice would you give?
So number one, be yourself. Nobody's ever going to be, I'm never going to be Mark Lanier. Nobody's going to be Mark Lanier. Nobody's going to be me. Everybody has the things that they excel in, the things that they don't care to do. So be yourself. Number two is be willing to do the work, even if it's not glamorous. Even if you might need to sacrifice something, you need to be willing to do the work, because the thing is judges who create scheduling orders, who create case management orders that dictate when an MDL case is going to go to trial, they're not necessarily thinking about your vacation schedule. They don't care. And so when you are called upon to help on a brief, when you are called upon to help review a production of millions of documents that need to be reviewed before we do a deposition of a really important corporate witness, then do it. Because that is where, when you do a really good job at that is, everybody recognizes it, everybody sees it, and everybody who is in a leadership position and has been blessed with that, with the trust of people, the plaintiffs bar and judges, and they've been appointed, they need help. And so if you are able to do the help and you do a great job, I assure you that is not as common as what you might think. And so you will be asked again and again, to the point where you're thinking to yourself, oh my gosh, no good deed goes unpunished. I should never have done such a good job on that. Now I'm being called constantly to do this. Now I'm going to be, now that person gets called to join a PSC. And it's because they showed up. They met a deadline when other people said, I'm sorry, I'm on vacation, I can't do this, or I'm too busy with something else.
It's the hustle mentality.
It's the hustle
mentality. It's why we love what we do and the people we get to do it with, right? Like that's
And believe me, am I calling my friends who will go unnamed, you may be one of them, and complaining about the fact that once again something, a briefing deadline interfered with something I wanted to do? Yeah, that happens. But ultimately, it gets done, and it gets done well, and it's rewarding. And if you do it well, then you can take the time off to spend that time that you need to spend and unwind.
When you're in it, be all in. And when you're disconnected, it's important to disconnect so that you can be all out to recharge, have that connection with your family, and make memories. So that's
exactly.
It's like you were just talking to your younger self. That was actually beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Okay, you said you had two
I have
questions.
one more question, and then you can go back to your family. So the last question is, how does someone get in touch with you?
Well, I'm just going to give out my email address. Kelsey.Stokes@lanierlawfirm.com. So that's KELSEY.STOKES@lanierlawfirm.com. And if you email me, I'll probably give you I will probably give you my cell phone number, but not yet. So, and then don't be afraid to say I'm following up on the below, because that's your way of that's somebody's way of maybe it's my own internal guilt where I feel immediately shamed when somebody says following up on the below. I immediately feel compelled to answer because I apparently missed an email and I shouldn't have. So. Please email me, and like I said, don't be afraid to ping me more than once.
I had so much fun with you. Thank you for being on, Kelsey.
This was
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in, and we have another episode coming up very soon. Should be uploaded in about a week from here, so stay tuned. Actually, should be one of the ELG members, so it should be good. Anyway, Lanier Law Firm, the best law firm in the United States, probably the world, for plaintiff litigation, and talking to one of the best lawyers, one of the people to ever do it, Kelsey Stokes. So thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Michael. I will say you are the most genuine person. I can seriously say this, like the most genuine person I know, and you are a true friend. And I'm not, people may not realize this, but we actually are very close. And this was a lot of fun, and I think that anybody who has an opportunity to work with you should.
Aw, thank you. That one will be a clip. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank
All right,
you.
take care, guys.
Thank you.